Welcome back to my fourth recording. So this epic will talking about the pathological phenomenon following the episode of Colic. So the idea came from the knowledge in equine practice actually. So basically, what will happen with the when the elephant suffering from the non-strangulation obstruction? So these figures show the foreign body that being pulled out from the elephant anus. I believe this elephant is in Thailand, somewhere in Marim. So the non-strangulation obstruction, also called simple obstruction. The pathological phenomenon may include: first one is physical obstruction of the GI tract by food, by foreign body, or by the strictures. The stricture is usually caused by something else, and after the impaction or physical obstruction, it causes trapping of fluid content or gas cranial to the obstruction site. There will be two major important alterations in physiology. The first one is pathology on the intestinal tissue, and the second pathology is due to the fluid loss. Remember, the fluid will be accumulate cranial to the obstruction site. That will be the cause of the fluid loss. So the pathology on the intestinal tissue itself, including the distension of the intestine from the fluid, gas, or the luminal content, and the stretching and distension will activate the pain receptor, and that causes the visual pain and excessive activation of the sympathetic system, which will be suppressed parasympathetic. That why will leading to the reduction in the movement of the intestine. The excessive distension leading to the occlusion of the intestinal blood vessel first will be compromised vein first and then arteries, and leading to the ischemic. And even it is ischemic because the tissue start to degenerate. You will see on the necropsy, you will see hyperemic congestion, and in the histopathology will be cell death and degeneration. So after the degeneration of the cell, intestinal wall will be changed in permeabilities and leak of the plasma into intestinal lumen, which will cause further loss in fluid. And also the endotoxin in the gut also can enter the blood circulation easier. So this ultrasonography is taking from the foal that's suffering from impaction of meconium. Now you can see that this is a pocket of the free fluid, and this is the descent of the small intestinal loop. And however, you still can see that the rim of the intestinal wall is still pretty much intact. So this is the pathology that happened to the intestinal wall. So regarding with the pathology due to the fluid loss, so the loss of the fluid in the colic of the non-strangulation cause losing in the extracellular fluid into the intestinal lumen, and which result in the reduction in the plasma volume, reduced cardiac output, reduced tissue perfusion, and also cause acid and base electrolyte imbalance, which are usually worsening when the illness is prolonged. So let's move to the pathological phenomenon in strangulation obstruction. So this picture is the example in equine pattern. It's the strangulated lipoma that wrapping around the segment of the small intestine. So most of the pathology phenomenon will be the same like in the simple obstruction, and there will be like immediate or slow progressive effect of the blood supply of the segment of the intestine that being strangulated. Usually vein first and then artery come later, and cause ischemic necrosis of the strangulated region of the small intestine. So this is the example of the strangulation in horses that have the ventral hernia of the small intestine and colon. What I like you to see is how fast the fluid can be lost through the strangulated region. So on the ground, on the intestinal loop, you see the plasma that being leaked out because the vein is compromised, and this will be one of the leading cause of death is the hypovolemic shock. So next is the non-strangulating infarction. Remember, this is rare in elephant, I believe. So basically, it compromises the blood flow without luminal obstruction, and over the infarction site, there is the alteration in the permeability of the intestinal wall, and usually it alters the intestinal movement. So in equine, usually causes by embolism, and that's why the lesion of the infarction site is a fan shape. But in elephants, I think it's secondary to something else like chronic prolonged distension of the loop that leading to the compromise of the intestinal circulation. So the other type of the colic, so could be I take the example the inflammation and infection. For example, the thing that happen following the inflammation infection is alteration in the movement, peristalsis, altered secretory function and absorption, and also change in permeability of the intestinal wall. And inflammation can cause the fluid loss to the exudation, and alteration in the permeability will leading to the excessive absorption of the enterotoxemic. So that will be the pathological phenomenon after the colic. Hope you enjoy it.